There are sorrows that older women never speak of. Not because they don't feel them, but because they think, my story isn't worth sharing, or I'm used to it, it's nothing, or more simply, I don't want to bother anyone. So they stay silent, and they keep going. On the outside, everything seems fine. They eat well, chat with their children and grandchildren, attend community gatherings now and then. But inside, there's a space that has no name, no witness, no light. A quiet emptiness only they can feel. When the door closes, when night falls, when the last voice of the day has long faded away. In therapy, we call this quiet loneliness, a form of isolation that's common among older women. It's not loud like the heartbreak of youth, nor sharp like grief. It's slower, deeper, and hard to name. It's the feeling of no longer being truly needed. The feeling of being among loved ones and yet fading into the background. The feeling that speaking up would be awkward, but staying silent slowly hurts. And over time, that woman doesn't just drift from others, she drifts from herself. What makes this kind of loneliness so difficult is how invisible it is. There are no dramatic signs, nothing that triggers immediate concern, but quietly it wears down the inner life. Slowly she withdraws, not out of anger, not out of sadness, but simply because she no longer feels truly seen. This video isn't here to offer advice or judgment. It's here to name something you may be feeling, but have never had the chance to say out loud. Together, we'll explore 5 types of quiet loneliness that many older women live with every day. Not to complain, not to fix everything at once, but to gently begin opening the door for light and connection to return. If you've ever felt empty in the midst of what looks like a full life, if you've ever smiled while quietly hoping someone might ask how you're really doing, then please stay. No one should have to carry those feelings alone. And by the end of this video, I hope you'll realize this kind of loneliness can be understood, and you can walk out of it without losing yourself along the way. If you're enjoying this content, comment 1 below to let me know you're here. If not, comment 0, and I'll work harder to bring you even better content. Now, let's start it. 1. Lonely when no one really needs you. Lorraine is 73 years old. She lives alone in a small house on the outskirts of Denver, a house that used to echo with the laughter of her husband and their 3 children. Now, no one lives there but her. Her husband passed away 6 years ago. Her children are all grown, with families of their own, each settled in a different state. She says, I don't blame my kids, I'm glad they're doing well. But lately, I've been feeling like no one really needs me anymore. That sentence seems simple, but it stayed with me for a long time. Because Lorraine isn't grieving abandonment. She still gets phone calls, occasional dinner invitations, and visits from her grandchildren during the holidays. But the feeling of being needed, in the way she once was, has quietly disappeared. You see, for most of her life, Lorraine was the one others relied on. She remembered everyone's birthdays. She knew who in the family liked what foods, who felt down on Sundays, who needed encouragement before a big moment. She once said, I used to know everything about my kids. I used to do everything for my husband. Now I don't know what my kids ate today, when they went to bed, or whether they're feeling okay. And no one needs to know those things from me anymore. That's a very particular kind of loneliness, one without noise. It's not the emptiness of being alone. It's the feeling that you're still here, still present, but your presence no longer feels necessary, like an actor still standing on stage after the scene has ended. As a therapist, I've met many older women who experience this feeling, and I always tell them one thing: this loneliness doesn't come from being deliberately left behind. It comes from having once been everything to someone, so much so that when they no longer need you in the same way, you no longer know who you are. But that doesn't mean you've lost your worth. In fact, it means you're being invited to discover a new kind of value, one that doesn't depend on what you do for others, but simply on your presence, your being. You can still be needed, but not to cook meals, babysit, or rush around solving problems. You can now be the keeper of memories, the one who carries kindness, the calm space where others come and feel safe to be themselves. And most importantly, you are needed by you, not just because you're still alive, but because after a lifetime of giving yourself to others, you deserve to live for yourself. If you've ever felt like Lorraine, know that you are not alone. This kind of loneliness can be named, and because it can be named, it can also be transformed. No one else needs to change. You simply begin by seeing yourself, not as an old role that's no longer needed, but as a whole person, still full of things worth loving. 2. Loneliness among loved ones. Not everyone who lives alone feels lonely. Many older women feel most alone while sitting right in the middle of their own families. I think of Rosa, age 70, who lives in a spacious house with her daughter's family, her daughter, son-in-law, and 2 young grandchildren. The house is always full of noise. The clatter of pots and pans in the kitchen, children laughing, music playing from someone's phone each afternoon. Rosa is part of it all. She's there at dinner. She helps pick up the kids from school. She answers quick questions about recipes or reminds her daughter about vaccination appointments. Everything seems complete on the surface. But then night comes. After the dishes are washed and the hallway lights are turned off, Rosa returns to her small room at the far end of the house. Inside, there's an old armchair by the window, a lamp with a soft yellow glow, and a worn-out radio with faded buttons. She often sits there for a long time, not reading, not listening, just looking through the curtain where the streetlight casts a faint, flickering glow. No one knows that in that moment, surrounded by what should feel familiar, she often feels like a stranger. Because the whole day might pass with people around, yet no one truly stops to ask what she's thinking. No one wonders what's weighing on her heart. No one reaches into the quiet parts of her that she keeps hidden. And she doesn't want to be a burden. She doesn't blame anyone. She knows her family is busy. She understands she's getting older. And it's that very understanding that makes her step back, gently, willingly, until eventually, she disappears from conversations that once made her feel like she belonged. This is what loneliness in the middle of love looks like. Not loud, not obvious, but deeply real. From a psychological perspective, this is one of the most common silent forms of loneliness among older women. The younger generation still loves them, still cares, but the emotional connection that once felt natural begins to fade. Deep stories stop being told, worries have no place to land. And so the woman slowly retreats, not because someone pushed her away, but because she quietly chose to step back, not wanting to interrupt. If you've ever sat in a room filled with laughter and still felt an emptiness in your chest, you are not alone. And there is nothing wrong with craving genuine connection, not through tasks, but through being truly heard. You don't need anyone to read your mind, but you can gently open a door with a small story, a simple moment of reaching out, a quiet step toward the connection you still deserve. Because loneliness in a room full of loved ones should never be the final chapter of anyone's life, especially not for a woman who spent her entire life loving the people in that room. 3. Lonely when you can't share your feelings with anyone. Judith is 74 years old. Her health is still good, her memory still sharp, and she has a small group of friends who walk together around the lake every Saturday morning. Anyone looking at her would say she's a cheerful, positive, easygoing person. But during a year-end gathering at a senior community event, she sat down next to me, holding a warm cup of tea for a long time, and quietly said just one sentence. "I have so much I want to say, but it feels like there's no one I can really say it to." She didn't cry. Her voice was calm, but her gaze drifted, as if those words she wanted to say had once looked for a way out, then slowly retreated because they couldn't find a safe place to land. Judith's story is not unusual. Many women her age don't lack people to talk to, but they do lack someone who truly listens. They have friends to walk with, family members who check in, grandkids who visit on weekends. But to sit down and say, "Lately I feel myself getting smaller," or "Some mornings I wake up and wonder why I'm still here," those are the things no one seems ready to hear. And so they stop saying them. They start choosing safe topics, weather, recipes, local news, surface-level things. The rest, they let fall asleep inside. Over time, they even forget how much they once needed to speak. Not because the feelings are gone, but because they've grown used to not being truly heard. From a psychological perspective, this is a form of emotional loneliness. These women still have language, still have the desire to connect, but they can't find a space safe enough to open up. And the longer these unspoken truths stay hidden, the heavier they become, quietly exhausting the spirit, even when everything on the outside seems fine. If you've ever sat across from someone, listening for an hour, and silently wished, "I wish someone would listen to me like this," you might be carrying this kind of loneliness. It doesn't come from the absence of people. It comes from the absence of true connection. But you can start with something small. Not by pouring everything out, but by choosing one person and trying to say one true thing, even just one sentence. Or maybe write it down, record it for yourself, or go to a place where speaking is welcomed without judgment. A small support group, a counseling session, or a quiet spiritual space. Because what matters isn't who listens, it's It's that you give yourself permission to hear your own voice, to speak, to finally exhale the words you've held in for too long. No one was born to swallow their feelings forever. And you, with all the life you've lived, the depth you carry, the pain you've endured, you deserve to be heard. You deserve to feel lighter. And you deserve to believe again that your voice still matters. It still deserves to be listened to. 4. Loneliness when no longer being listened to. A warm birthday gathering of a 3-generation family. A long table filled with delicious food, children running around, laughing, adults chatting, occasionally bursting into laughter. At the head of the table, an elderly woman quietly places some vegetables into her bowl. She looks up, ready to chime in as the family discusses housing prices, but halfway through her sentence, she stops. No one interrupted her, but no one paused to listen either. Her words hung in the air for a moment, then faded as if they had never been spoken. I witnessed that moment once, and what stayed with me wasn't the noise of the celebration, but that tiny moment of silence, when someone tried to connect, then withdrew, because they realized no one was truly listening. Evelyn, 75, once shared something similar. She said she speaks less these days, not because she has nothing to say, but because when she does, no one really hears her. When she talks about memories of her mother, the topic gets changed. When she offers her thoughts on life, her children nod politely and quickly move on. So she's learned to step back, to smile out of politeness, to nod to keep things smooth. It feels like my role now is to keep the peace, she said, not to say anything real. From a psychological perspective, this is a form of loneliness born from being denied the right to be heard. It doesn't happen in arguments. It happens at family dinners. It doesn't come from conflict, but from conversations that seem close yet lack depth. As women grow older, society often assumes they've said enough, lived enough, and now it's their time to simply listen. And these quiet assumptions make many women feel like they're fading, not in body but in voice. People still listen to your stories, but only the cheerful parts. They still ask questions, but only for information. The things you truly want to share, your feelings, your reflections, your subtle insights from decades of life, those are no longer heard with genuine attention. If you've ever felt this way, please know it's not your fault. Your voice isn't getting weaker. It's simply being drowned out in a world moving too fast. And what you need is not silence, but to choose again where and with whom your voice will be honored. Sometimes it doesn't take many people. Just one person, one space, where you don't have to shorten your story, add humor, or avoid being honest. Just one place where you're allowed to speak a full sentence, share a full thought, recall a full memory, without being brushed aside. That alone can be a form of healing. Because the greatest loneliness isn't when no one is around. It's when people are there, but your heart is still left behind. 5. Loneliness when losing connection with yourself. Sometimes, loneliness doesn't come from the absence of loved ones. It doesn't come from not being heard. It comes from something quieter, when you no longer know who you are. I once worked with Helen, a 76-year-old retired elementary school teacher. She had spent nearly 40 years in the classroom, energetic, sharp, attentive to detail. She took notes in every meeting, hand-wrote her lesson plans, and always arrived earlier than her colleagues. But then one day, no one was calling her about meetings. The classroom didn't need her anymore. Her drawers were full of old notebooks, and she started to feel out of sync. Not because she was sad. She was healthy. She had loving children and grandchildren. She still participated in community activities. But one morning, sitting with a lukewarm cup of tea, she suddenly realized it had been a long time since she had done anything just for herself. Not for anyone else. Not to serve a purpose. Not to fit a role. And that realization made her feel lost, even within her own soul. This is a deep kind of loneliness, the disconnection from yourself. You don't know what you enjoy anymore. You don't know what you dislike or what you hope for. You can't remember the last time you wrote something just for you. The voice inside has gone quiet because for so long, you lived by the rhythm of everyone else. From a psychological perspective, this often happens to women who have spent their entire lives caring for others. They are mothers, wives, caretakers, supporters, keepers of peace. But when those roles begin to fade, they're left asking, if I am no longer all those things, then who am I? And if that question remains unanswered, they slowly start to withdraw. Not because anyone has hurt them, but because they no longer feel they have anything left to offer themselves. But the beautiful thing is, your connection to yourself is never truly lost. It's just quiet, waiting to be awakened. An awakening doesn't require anything grand. Just a few minutes each day to sit in stillness, To write a few lines no one will read, to cook something simply because you love the taste, to listen again to the song that once made you tear up, or to place your hand on your chest, close your eyes and ask, "Am I still here?" In those small acts, you begin to return to yourself. You don't need to become the old version of you. You don't need to define yourself perfectly. You just need to show up, gently, fully, and truthfully, because in the end, the most important connection isn't with your children, your friends, or the world. It's the connection between you and yourself. And when that relationship is restored, all the other kinds of loneliness begin to soften, one breath at a time. If you saw yourself in any part of the 5 experiences we just explored, please know this: you are not alone. And the beautiful truth is, any form of loneliness that is finally named begins to soften. You don't have to force yourself to be okay. You don't need to rush to be understood. All you need is to begin with one small step, coming back to yourself, to your heart, and opening it just a little more. Whether it's through a shared thought, a few lines in a journal, or a quiet minute in the morning, that alone is already a step out of the loneliness. If this video touched something in you, a memory, a feeling, or even a quiet sense of relief, go ahead and click like, as a gentle nod to yourself. And if you know someone, a friend, a sister, a mother, who may also be quietly moving through their own kind of silent loneliness, please consider sharing this video with them. Sometimes one small piece of healing through a video speaks louder than 1,000 well-meaning words. And finally, if you want to keep walking alongside these honest, soft, and deeply human reflections on aging, where every emotion is heard and held with care, please subscribe to the channel. Each week, we'll meet again, not to fix anything grand, but simply to sit with one another for a little while and speak the kinds of truths the world so often forgets to ask about. Thank you for staying until the end, wishing you a day of peace within and all around you.